All right, guys. Looking forward to today's episode of the show as we're joined by Helen. Helen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Luke. Yeah, thanks for having me.
No worries. So, Helen, for those who don't know who you are, could you share a little bit about who is Helen? And then we'll dive into the conversation we're going to have today.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, hi everybody. I'm the creator of Yumi and Happiness. And I'll just tell a little bit about my story, or first just give a brief description of what I do. So I help entrepreneurs. I remove mental blocks in 15 minutes over a phone call. It's like a special technique that I have. It's called DNA Upgrade. And just a little bit about my story. So when I was a kid, like the first question that got me thinking was, what do I want? And it was like the natural thing was for me, like, I want to be happy. And then I went on this big quest, my whole, like about 9 years to find the answer to happiness, traveled all over the world. And then 9 years in, I met this businessman. I just did an Atlantic crossing from South Africa. I'm from South Africa to Brazil, and then went over to England, and I met this businessman. And he was wealthy, he had everything, he had a beautiful girlfriend, and he had money, and he was living in the States at that time, and he had businesses, and like the perfect life. But all he could talk about was his travel experiences. And it was kind of like a light bulb, like epiphany for me. And I was thinking, if I don't find the answer to fulfillment soon, all I'm gonna have, because at that time I was traveling for a long time already, searching for this answer. And I thought, this is gonna be me one day, just talking about my travel experiences, because on my journey, that was kind of like my highs, like my happy highs, until I found the answer. And then the following year, and then I started writing this book, Yumi and Happiness. And then the following year, I found my answer to happiness. And then my entrepreneurial journey started from there, where it was actually a funny story. A friend of mine from Australia, she sent me a link, but she sent me the wrong link. And she said, sign up for this course. And it was a course with Anik Singhal, but it was supposed to be something else. But I watched the video, and I was like, I signed up, and then it all started, and I turned my book into my first digital product.
Wow.
And that's like how the whole online thing started for me, and how I started networking with other entrepreneurs and started getting a love for that. And then from there, I turned that into like the coaching, because people wanted to have more of like a personal guidance. And then from there, it turned into the DNA upgrades, where now I'm just focused on entrepreneurs and just focus on. So it was like kind of two problems that I solved. First was, what's the answer to happiness? And then the second thing is, how can I live the most efficient life? And that's where I started working with all these natural biohacks, fasting and EFT, neurofeedback, and then now these 15-minute upgrades.
Oh, you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm finished.
Awesome. No,
Did you hear that?
Yes, I caught the end of it. So I'm not sure if it's my internet, so I'll keep an eye on that. But no, that's awesome. And so the first question that comes to mind, so much like success is happiness something that we define like for ourselves? Does that make sense? So all of us kind of have that definition of what like happiness means for us.
Are you asking if everybody should define it for themselves? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So much like success, like, I have a different version of success to what somebody else does. And so is happiness the same? Like, is it the same thing? Like, there isn't just like this concept of like, this is happiness and it applies to everyone,
Yeah, I hear what you say. It's a very good question, because I always say people are very confused with the word happiness. And so I think, there's two parts to that. So I equate happiness with fulfillment. So, and I think if you talk about happiness in that sense, I would kind of generalize it, fulfillment, just based on my own opinion. I generalize, that I feel there is kind of, I'm not saying there's one method, but I feel there's some kind of like a general definition of what fulfillment I think should be, coming from the inside, however you want to term that and all that. So when it comes to happiness, if you equate it to fulfillment, I would say yes, there's one thing. But if you just use the word happy as something like joy, then all of us derive joy in a different way. So I do believe joy is very important part. Like, you know, like I always say, do what makes you happy, or do what makes you happy. And that means like, do what you enjoy. I always say that. But when it comes to like the big term happiness, I would say it's more for me like fulfillment.
Yeah. And kind of one reason I wanted to ask that is because I feel like everyone wants to be happy, right? And there's obviously a lot of people that aren't happy, you know, and so it's like, well, what's the difference then between those that kind of are and those that aren't? And is happiness also, like, I've heard this from different people, so happiness is something that kind of like comes and goes, right? Because it, you know, it's like an emotion, and so it's more about, like you say, finding that inner fulfillment rather than focusing so much on being happy. So I don't know your take on that.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, because I believe, of course, because, you know, everything that I do is about happiness. I do believe you can be happy most of the time. I mean, I see myself like that. I'm pretty much happy. There's sometimes where I feel a little bit unsettled, and it's an energetic thing for me. So I feel like dense in my energy body, but I don't go to that intense lows. It might be like a brief moment when something really crisis happens, you know, like that. But in a general state, because I believe that it's our natural state. Happiness is our natural state. So my definition of happiness, it's knowing who and what you are and living from that knowing. And then I add, it's our natural state.
Right.
So for me, when it comes to that, I feel, I don't say if it's an emotion, I feel it's like a natural state. It's like it's like happiness. It's like an internal state of like peace and joy and bliss and knowing. It's like a feeling of knowing. So when I found this answer, it's when I found that feeling, and that feeling was a knowing. It was a knowing. It's not like something that I could say in my mind before. Okay, I'm traveling right now. I'm feeling pretty good right now. I'm on an island right now. I'm sitting on a palm tree with my friends right now, having a good time, you know, playing, like listening to music or something. Oh, I'm so happy right now. Like, that's a different type of feeling. That's like kind of an experience for the moment, and you're feeling all those sensations and emotions in that moment. But then when you're done with it, then you're like, it's gone. But with the happiness I'm talking about, it's a knowing of your natural bliss.
Yeah. So in that case, then would you say like there's different types of happiness? Because I think like people, like you kind of mentioned it a bit there, place like their happiness on things like objects or material things, or like if they're in this entrepreneurial journey, or just like on their personal growth journey, when I get to this place, then I'm going to be happy, you know. And kind of the vibe I'm getting is like, it's more of like that inner work of knowing like who you are ultimately, and just you know, it's come up in a few different podcasts, like living life from in to out, not from like out to in, you know. So would you say there's like those different types of happiness then?
No, not really. I think that's part of the big problem for most people, exactly how you're saying, is that because people are searching for that thing, maybe as a type, thinking that, okay, if I find career success, then I will find that elusive happiness. Okay, maybe if I find a partner, then I will find that elusive happiness. But the whole point is, if you're gonna try to box it from an external experience, it's always going to elude you. So that's why I kind of like very firm about the fact that that comes from the knowing of who and what you are, and the knowing of this is my natural state. It's natural for me to be happy, because what happens, what I see is a lot of times people try to rationalize it so much with their mind, and when they can't find it, because now they're trying to search for it here, search for it there, and this way and that way, and they can't find it, and then, you know, like it becomes complicated for them. It's because they've moved away from themselves rather than moving towards themselves. Do you see what I mean? Like,
no, that makes sense. You mentioned a few times in terms of with the knowing and with kind of like, you know, and so part of that is like who they are. So how do people or do you have like practical things for people to start that journey to discover who they are? Like I'm huge on like the whole self-discovery process. And I think it's a journey in itself, because like we're always like evolving and everything. But then kind of like within that self-discovery, it's like discovering and then knowing your key life values, you know, your things that you believe in, and kind of all these sorts of things. So yeah, your thoughts on that, and if you have any like practical things that people can do to start to discover like who they are, because it sounds like that's such of a huge part of like happiness ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because you're a human being, so you should know what you're doing here. And I always take the example of, say, like, you know, you're a leopard or something. Like a leopard knows a leopard is a leopard, so it does leopard things. But the human being is like the only person or thing that does all these crazy things because it doesn't know what it is, you know. Just like so I think that's so fundamental. And how you can do that is, okay, depending, you know, I'm not like you know, for any religion or anything, it's nothing to do with religion. It's more like you have to find your path, and it's starting with beliefs, and you have to look at like your beliefs. I think that's a big part, is looking at your beliefs and trying to eliminate. That was a big part of my journey, is just eliminating a lot of these limiting beliefs first, and like, you know, when I was searching for this answer. And then I mean, I believe that there's a larger consciousness system, and I'm an individuated unit of consciousness. So I see it from a very like an energy perspective, and then I also have a very close relationship with Source. I call Source. So I think the practical things you can do is to have a relationship, you know, to communicate with it. Like, say for example, you have your boyfriend and girlfriend. You take care of that relationship. You know, you have to communicate, and not like it's an object, you know, not like it's like some like an object. You need to really like find this communication skill. And I mean, how I found it, the method is a guy from India, and he gave me 4 techniques. I know the closest thing I can you know, can relate that to is meditation, but it's not really a meditation. But if you go on my website, yumiandhappiness.com, and like my whole program is as part of my course is this method that he taught me. And this is just 4 practical techniques, but meditation is another thing. So yes, so anything that you can make connection with Source. Doesn't matter what you call it, consciousness, Source, God, whatever you want to call it. But you need to really work on that relationship first. Because if you think about it, why are you here? You're here because of a creator, whatever you want to call that. But it's important to discover that relationship and focus on that, because that's where your power lies at the end of the day, not what other people tell you, because those people were also created by Source. So, you know, like you can't really trust those sources. You need to go to the main source to get the information from.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you mentioned like a huge part of your work now is with the DNA upgrades. And helping entrepreneurs. So not to kind of like give your whole kind of coaching thing away, but for people who are like, well, Helen, what the hell is a DNA upgrade? Could you kind of explain what that is and how that helps people?
Yes. Okay. I'm gonna give the example of playing like a video game. Okay. So say you play like Mega Man. So like Mega Man, you know, like Super Smash. And you're like the player, Luke, and then you have the controller, and then you have the screen with Mega Man. So when I do this DNA upgrades, I put you, so like you, Luke, in your body would be Mega Man. But then you, Luke, the player, would be your higher consciousness. So your almost your gateway to Source. Okay. So rather than getting your information from, say, a book or mindset training or somebody else, when I do this 15-minute technique, I put you in touch with the real player. So I create the interface where you, Luke, the avatar is on, your body, you know, on Earth, if you can call it that. And then I put you in touch with your higher consciousness, your higher self. And then I facilitate that communication. And I work with the environment around your genes. And then that will, you know, that's like a kind of a communication tool I have. And then I upgrade your DNA with that, because it's already been proven that your genes do not. We were taught in school, and they still actually teach this in school. But scientists have already proven this. Dr. Bruce Lipton has already proven through epigenetics that your genes do not control who you are. So what controls who you are is the environment of the cell.
Environment, yeah.
So that's what I do, is I directly affect that environment, and that's why people remove these blocks so quickly, because I go directly in there, and then through your communication with your higher self, you get that information that interacts then with the DNA, and then put you into action to then manifest very quickly what you want or what you need. Let me rather put it like that, what you need, because your higher self knows best what you need to move forward. When you're stuck, it's like a quicker way than, say, for example, when you meditate, you kind of believe that you're in touch with your higher self when you do that, right? Like with some higher, why else would you meditate? You're kind of like getting some information, you're feeling calm, and then you can go on, and you also kind of move forward after you've meditated in a way. Yep. But the thing is, it's not as, I would say, powerful, because you don't really know what you're doing in that moment. You might be thinking thoughts, you might be, I don't know, falling asleep, or you don't even know what you're doing. So it's kind of like a powerful, it's more like a power thing that I do. Does it make sense?
Yeah. And so that can be done in just 15 minutes.
15 minutes is all. Yeah.
Wow.
So I immediately take you into another state. It's a very gentle process. It's not like anything scary or anything. You don't have to do anything. You just listen. It's not even on video or anything. Okay. And then I just do this thing and put you in touch with your higher self, create that environment, and it's quick, because it's energy. So and then usually afterwards it's quite intense, but you immediately go to another state, and also a state where you are very present. So your thoughts don't get in the way, you're just kind of in the process.
Yeah. And so where does kind of this kind of come in with limiting beliefs as well, if that makes sense? People obviously have those limiting beliefs that can sometimes stop them, or whatever it is for them to take a certain action, or kind of these sorts of things. So I'm just wondering, with this DNA upgrade, does this also override those beliefs ultimately, so then people do take action, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what it does, because that's why when with these blocks that you have, usually it's something that you've been struggling with for a long time, that you can't maybe get through with mindset training, and you're just really stuck on some things. So what then happens is it kind of I believe a lot in the mirror effect. So your body, everything, like I explained now with this avatar example, for example, you're just the avatar, but your higher self is just kind of a projection. So when so this energy gets stuck in your body, and it's just a manifestation of where this block is, for example. So it's like a limiting belief as well. It's just kind of stuck, that energy, and it's because of the environment. So it could be a very reinforced environment, say from childhood, that it takes a lot of time. Maybe you've done mindset training, maybe you've tried loads of things, but because you have spent so much, I would say, human time it being in the wrong environment, that it's so strong, and that is then, that environment is what's corresponding with your genes to make you then do these habits that you don't really want to do, stay stuck in habits that you don't really want to be stuck in.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. One thing I do want to touch upon is the energy kind of side of things as well. So I think this is where a lot of people kind of get confused or switch off, because I don't think they understand energy. I'm somebody who so I'm kind of an open-minded guy. So I kind of want to learn most things, and especially about this, how that works and everything. I've learned a few kind of I've learned about it over the last kind of 18 months or so. But for those who just coming across this podcast, this live stream, and maybe they've heard energy before, could you talk us kind of through that? Because I think from my own past experience, this is something that people find confusing.
Okay, the energy thing. Yeah, I know when people say energy, people feel like, oh, what is that? I think it's without going too much into like, you know, complicated things right now. I think it's you have to be open-minded.
Yeah.
I mean, there is science supporting this, and you know, if anybody listening to this, I'm not going to talk too long about like quantum stuff now. But if you are interested, just you know, do that research on quantum physics or quantum mechanics. Because that explains it. I mean, that explains it really well. But I, for example, believe in that we are in a simulation, that we are in a virtual reality, and that you kind of like, you know, it's like you're kind of logged onto. I'm like logged on. My higher self is at the moment playing the avatar Helen, because I've done a lot of past life regression and things like that. So I know of my other life. So that's why it's not a fearful thing for me. But when it comes to energy, if you can see it like a computer, then you know it's just units.
Okay.
You know, so, like, not to be so like hung up on the word energy, thinking like, ooh, you know, it's like something scary. If you see it more like a kind of tiny little pieces of something bigger. And if you think about the mind, it's like a quantum field. So it's like energy, it's like an energy field. And it's just broken up in tiny little pieces, and everything. If you think of yourself as an avatar, for example, then if you put that in like a virtual image, and you break it down into little pieces, then it's like tiny little atoms. And so that's kind of where the energy thing comes from. I don't know if that answers your question, or should I go into more detail? If there's something specific maybe that you want me to elaborate on concerning what I just said.
Yeah. No, just kind of like wanted to get your thoughts on that. And obviously, people can obviously do more research to quantum physics, etc. And again, like I just think it's something that when people, I suppose it's not something that people can kind of like physically see or something, you know. And maybe that's why like they have a hard time kind of like understanding, especially when they're like trying to improve themselves. It's like my energy, like kind of what is that, and like how does that link into me growing, if that makes sense?
You mean growing internally?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I heard you say. So how I would explain that? So for example, you're under a what is it called? Not ultrasound. What do you call it? Like X-ray type of thing, right?
X-ray, yeah.
So it's almost like that. So then you see like the colors. So if you can say that, so say you take that example and you see like, you know, there's like energy right now. Or I was watching something today of Greg Braden. If they want to go and do a little research on these type of things as well, Greg Braden, he does a lot of things that help you also understand. He's like on the science side of things. I'm a lot on the science side more than on the spirituality side of things. And so that's a good person to look at. And also Dr. Bruce Lipton, he explains a lot of things for people to understand. So so say for example you see it like that, then you can see your energy. You see, so you might see me right now as a physical thing, but if you see me in that sense, then I'm also an energy. So it's just about changing your perception. It is, you know, it's not either right or wrong, but it's not like it doesn't exist just because you don't see it on a day-to-day. But there's a lot of people that can. I can see energy fields and auras and things like that. So there are people that can do it, and if you open yourself up, then it's just a matter of perception. There's no right and wrong, you know, like it's just a matter of awareness. So yes, it does exist. Just because you might not be aware of it yet doesn't mean it doesn't exist in that form. But again, it's what you're comfortable with. And again, also energy you can feel. So for example, say like you know, you can feel like heat, you know, you can feel heat of energy, or like you can feel like balls of energy in your hands, and you know, like you can play with these things and you can teach yourself these skills, and then it become more, you will start feeling more comfortable with it. So also say when I do these, you know, upgrades, when I work with this energy, people can feel, because I can like, it's almost like I get remote access to your body, but not in a scary way. And I can feel like in your body, because it's an energy thing, and energy doesn't have like, it doesn't matter like space and things like that. It's just kind of like a feeling. And that, again, to tie that in with the happiness and knowing who you are, once you get to that knowing, that's like the feeling, and that's the realization of, listen, I'm not just a body on earth. I'm more than that. And when you start seeing yourself as an energy field, as a, like you're part of a huge field, that's when you get confidence. That's when you get power. That's when you can, like, yes, I'm not just this poor little me here that's a victim on earth. I'm so much more, I'm a part of this amazing energy field. I can do so many things.
Yeah, for sure. And so obviously you work with entrepreneurs. So why, I'm kind of interested in why do entrepreneurs need to, like, I suppose like everyone needs to know this to move forward in their lives, I feel, because for me, it's part of like that whole personal growth, personal development, improving oneself. But I'm kind of interested in why you're kind of working with entrepreneurs specifically, with the DNA upgrades, with like the happiness, with kind of everything that you do.
Okay. Well, I chose it, I suppose. I chose it, and it's also kind of like a higher calling for me. I saw it in a vision, to be honest, and that I want to work with leaders and entrepreneurs because my greater vision is to build a world of happiness for all, and I believe if I start from there, the impact, the impact
that kind of like trickles down.
Yes, exactly, and then the other aspect is also because I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I know the journey, and I know you know it yourself. You just kind of get this love for entrepreneurs, just like this compassion, because I think when you're not an entrepreneur, people think like, oh, it's so easy. You're just like overnight success, and you're just like killing it, like, oh man.
So, it's complete opposite.
I know. We know the work, we know the hours, we know the tears and the pain and the sweat. So I suppose, like just on a more of a human level, I have that kind of a loyalty. So of course it's not, but I mean, of course I've helped people from all walks. It's not like I'm like closed off to anybody else. It's nothing like that. But it's just kind of a choice I made, and this development of the business side of things just developed in that way.
Amazing. Okay, cool. Helen, do you have any like final thoughts or words of inspiration for our listeners? Maybe some like practical things that they can kind of take away from this episode, or anything inspirational that they can take away? Just some final thoughts ultimately.
Okay. Well, I would say just go easy on yourself. Have compassion for yourself. I think that's very important, that everybody is, because it's such a demanding world that we live in. I think we need to be kind to ourselves. So I would say that's the first thing. Be kind to yourself. Don't give yourself a hard time, just keep trying at it. And a big thing I would say is just work on your intuition and work on strengthening your relationship with whatever you want to call it, source, consciousness. If you want to know more things, come and check my my pages, things like that. Or you can ask me, you can reach out to me if you just have questions. Because I think people are scared, and it's nothing to be scared of. It's the most beautiful thing when you have a loving relationship with your creator. And I'm not talking about just talking about a friendship relationship, whatever you want to call it, but a real relationship. So I would say that's important thing. And practical things, just to center yourself, I would say, very important. Do things you enjoy. Do things you enjoy. Don't care about what other people do. That's another thing. Mind your own business. This is your life. Mind your own business. Don't worry about what other people do. It's nothing to do with you. Just, be like in the zone all the time. And the most important thing is do things you enjoy. Make time for those things that you enjoy. I mean, I'm like a kid. I do kids things because I enjoy kids things. I don't care, I go cycle. I do like singing on my bicycle when I cycle. I'm like a real kid because I enjoy that. It makes me super happy in that sense, like those joyful things. So I say like charge your battery with that, and then focus on your relationship with source, and then just maybe on a practical kind of like focus thing, I would say mind mapping has helped me a lot. Mind mapping. And then a thing I'm doing now is time boxing. Time boxing, is that what you call it? Time boxing. Yeah, it's like when you break, say you take an hour and
Yeah,
you
time. Yeah, yeah,
time
yeah.
boxing, right?
Time
So,
batching. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
yeah,
something like that.
so
Yeah.
that's quite a nice technique that I'm using, and I'm just like going into the zone with it. So yeah, that's more on a practical side.
So just quickly on the intuition thing.
Yes.
So can people develop their intuition, and if so, like, just very quick, like, how do they do that?
Yes, you can develop that. It's like a relationship thing again, and it comes from that relationship with source. Because what happens is, and that's the thing that it's all tying in with feelings, trusting yourself, building your confidence based on your relationship with source, because that's, or your higher self, whatever you want to call that. And you can also strengthen these DNA upgrades, because when I do it, I work on strengthening your intuition at the same time. So when I put you in touch with the higher self, you already meet, if you haven't yet, you meet that part of yourself, and then the relationship is like started. Okay. So that helps. But then intuition, it's just, don't doubt yourself. So when something good happens, say like that voice tells you, that your intuition voice tells you, okay, go do this, and you do it and it's good result, make a note of it. Even if you have to write it down, make a note of it and say, okay, this turned out well here. What did it feel like? Like, do a little start kind of really working on that parts of that intuition thing, and then forget about thinking about other people, what they do. Just make your own intuition, because it's a very unique feeling to you, and then you will start having that relationship. And now, okay, when I do this happened, and you just build on it, and then you will just start living, and things will just go right most of the time for you because of that strength.
Amazing. I love that. Helen, thank you so much for joining me today. Yeah, where can people go if they are interested in these DNA upgrades and to connect with you?
Yes. Okay, so my handle on Instagram is @youmeandhappiness. My website is youmeandhappiness.com, all written out. And Twitter _Helen Muller. And then I'm on YouTube as well.
Okay.
It's You, Me and Happiness, Helen Muller, MULLER. And Facebook also, You, Me and Happiness, Helen Muller.
Amazing. So guys, I will link that all in the description or comments, depending where you're watching this. And yeah, I will be back next week with another awesome guest. Helen, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome, Luke. Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody. Thanks.